Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and investors of all ages. Welcome to the Patty Brennan Show. Whether you have $20 or $20 million, this show is for those of you that want to protect, grow, and use your assets to live your very best lives. My name is Eric Furman, Chief Planning Officer here at Key Financial, and returning as your guest host for this episode of the Patty Brennan Show. Also here in studio once again is our very special guest, PIMCO's Head of Advisor Education, Mr. John Nersesian. John, welcome to the show once again.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, John, we have a great topic for today. I think we're, on this, which is, unlike some of our other ones, we're kind of going to dispense with any kind of math and formulas and numerical
financial
things.
Advice. Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. And we're really going to be talking about an important issue that you and the folks over at PIMCO are really pushing the frontier on, which I think is great. This is really kind of the table side conversations that we would have with clients in the conference room or they might have at their kitchen tables.
Right.
So I'm really excited today. So what we're going to be talking about is this concept of family wealth planning.
Yeah.
And, to be honest with you, I think that, some of our listeners today might not be familiar with that concept, and certainly some financial advisors out there as well, because really our role is to sit across the table from the client, understand their needs, listen to them, and ultimately help them accumulate wealth, preserve wealth, minimize taxes, distribute and transfer risk. The list goes on and on and on. But this is a unique concept that I think is really, really important and needs to be essentially folded into the broader kind of holistic advice that we provide.
I'm with you, Eric. I think, unfortunately, I can't tell you why, but here in America, there's always been this perspective that we don't talk about money as a family, right? We talk about how was your day at school, what score did you get in the soccer game this afternoon? Mm-hmm. We talk to our financial advisors about rates of return and taxes. But for some reason, culturally, we're just not comfortable talking about money and expectations and values with our loved ones. So I'm glad that you're bringing up the topic.
Yeah, for sure. So, where I'd like to start here is this idea of family wealth planning, since you guys are really kind of on the forefront, of this concept. So for our listeners today, can you really just kind of explain kind of very succinctly what it is and why for not only clients but advisors this is really a great opportunity to embrace?
Yeah, that's a great question or great segue, Eric. So look, at the end of the day, when I'm no longer here, my money's going to go to one of three places. It's either going to go to the government, hopefully not.
If you've got a good financial advisor.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. We find ways to minimize the amount that goes to the government. It can go to charity, causes that are important to me, or it will ultimately go to the people that I care about, the people that I love, my family members or others in that particular tranche. And so the question is when those individuals wind up receiving or inheriting this wealth, whether it's large or small, the question is, are they prepared for it? Mm-hmm. Have we done a better job of not just transferring money, but transferring values, transferring expectations, transferring responsibilities to these individuals? Look, at some point in my life, I'm a little bit less worried about whether or not I have enough money to retire on. I think I've kind of checked that box at age 65. Mm-hmm. What does keep me awake at night, Eric, are two things, and I'll tell you what they are. Their names are Margot and Daniel. And Margot is my 24-year-old daughter, dating some knucklehead over in Rome. And my son Daniel's 28 years old. He works for the Chicago White Sox. Mm-hmm. And at some point, they're going to wind up being the recipients of whatever money we've left behind. Mm. And so the question that I constantly think about, or I'm beginning to think about, is have I done a good job in preparing them? Are they prepared to handle not only the financial responsibility of wealth, but are they emotionally prepared for that particular experience, whether that number is large or small? Will this transference of wealth, will it be a positive impact? Will it have a positive impact in their lives? Or will it potentially lead to some of the negative consequences that you sometimes see with families who do wind up leaving a large bequest to their loved ones?
Yeah, so you highlight an important aspect, which is at the end of the day, as the saying goes, you can't take it with you.
Bummer. I'm going to find a way to. You're selling me short, buddy. I got a lot of talent. I'm going to find a way to take it with
good stuff. Well, hey, let me know if you come up with something. But, in thinking about, this podcast today and this concept of wealth planning, I think we can kind of look back in financial lore, and you can always find these, incredible stories of people that amassed a fantastic fortune and then somehow lost it, or it was dissipated for one reason or another with the passage of time. So, I'd like to kind of get your response, to this, particular situation. So, many people kind of know the story of Cornelius Vanderbilt, known as the Commander.
Right.
And so
Vanderbilt University, yeah.
Exactly right. So, he had amassed an incredible fortune for his age. I think something north of $100 million, back at the time of his death. He passed roughly 90% of that wealth on to his son, Billy, who then subsequently doubled it in just 9 years before his unfortunate death. Now, the interesting part about the Vanderbilt story is when the wealth passed to the third generation, that is when the wealth began to dissipate from that point forward. So there is actually, a biography that is done, and they had quoted one of the Vanderbilt's grandsons, and he, kind of opined the following statement. Inherited wealth is a real handicap to happiness. It has left me with nothing to hope for, nothing definite to seek or strive for. And I just think that's such a fascinating thing to think if you come into a significant amount of money that would change your values, your perspective on life. So
it's counterintuitive, don't you think, Eric? I mean, the assumption is, oh gosh, I would love to be the recipient of somebody else's bequest. I'd love to wind up with a pile of money that maybe I didn't earn or count on and that was left to me. But I think you nailed something there. It's the idea that once again, when those dollars come to me, am I prepared for it? What kind of impact does that wealth have on me and my views on life? For some families, not all, but for some, they suggest that there's a real challenge. My children are to grow up without proper motivations. This significant wealth that they have is going to encourage them maybe to be a little bit less entrepreneurial or a little bit less involved in the workforce to make it on their own, so to speak. How about this? Significant wealth can lead to materialism. I don't know about you. I want to raise grounded kids. I want to give them financial resources and opportunity, of course, but I certainly don't want them to be materialistic. I don't want them to be entitled. I don't want them to be arrogant. I don't want them to judge their relationships with other people based on financial levels of wealth. I want them to view the world in a more holistic capacity. Warren Buffett had a great quote.
Oh, yes, please. Share this one. I love it.
I'll probably get it wrong, but I think we'll get the general gist of it, which is the perfect amount of money to leave my children is enough so they can do anything in this world, but not so much that they'll choose to do nothing. So how does a family find that right balance of providing financial opportunity for their children to educate them or to provide educational opportunities for their kids down the road? How do we do that in a way that doesn't have the negative implications that we've discussed so far?
Yeah, so I think you highlight an important part. I think naturally people would worry that their children would engage in profligate behavior and squander, the money.
It happens.
But I think you bring up something much more important, which is the psychology and how does it change how people view the world, and ultimately does it change, their ability to be productive and decent members of society. So, with that, this idea that wealth kind of dilutes with the generations.
Sure.
There's this wonderful topic that you guys use called friction points.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about family wealth planning, can you identify for our viewers what are kind of the main friction points as it relates to this topic?
Yeah. So friction, meaning the wealth does get destroyed or it does dissipate from generation to generation. In fact, there's a famous phrasing, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And it kind of ties in with your Vanderbilt story, that the original family members create, the patriarch, matriarch, create the wealth. It passes on to G2, but what happens along the way as it goes from G1 to G2, eventually to G3? What happens is, as our wealth level rises, so does our consumption, right? We make more money and we start buying toys.
Right. Yep.
Cars and airplanes and boats and second
Tangible
and third
things.
homes. Yeah, of course. So our level of spending rises commensurately. And then eventually, of course, when that wealth is transferred, there are friction points. Number one, the principal amount gets divided among a number of beneficiaries. They're accustomed to a higher standard of living. There are taxes that are incurred along the way. There is inflation, of course, which has a negative impact on our principal and ability to retain it. And then all of a sudden, what seemed to be an insurmountable level of wealth has been dissipated from G1 to G2 to G3. But to your point, Eric, it's not just the reduction in dollars that I think is maybe the greatest concern for families. It's the concern of, are my children prepared for this? Or maybe more importantly, what can I do to help prepare them for this eventual experience so that they grow up in a world where they're appreciative of the financial opportunities that they've received, as opposed to some of those negative attributes that we've identified.
Yeah, wonderful. So, I think this is a good point to maybe bring this idea head on with reality of being in the room with the client. So what I want to kind of go over and get your input on, is this idea of family wealth planning given certain perspectives that we tend to observe in practice on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
So, here's kind of the first profile, if you will, that we tend to run into. So we'll have meetings and we'll talk about estate planning and legacy and things of that nature. But, there is a certain segment of the population here that says, listen, I've raised my kids, I put them through college, I bought a car, paid for their wedding, I might still be paying their cell phone bill, right? I've done my part.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily feel a need to kind of leave a significant legacy to them.
I'm not going to subordinate my own expenses or happiness today so I can leave more money to my kids. Is that the profile you're describing?
Exactly right. I'm not going to engage in kind of a parsimonious retirement so then my kids can have more money.
Yeah.
And then there's other circumstances where they might say, look, my kids are doing better than I was at this age. Yeah. They're financially secure. So, in these types of viewpoints, they just, they don't really see the importance and the need to still have that discussion. So what do you say to that perspective?
I don't say anything, but I ask questions. So let's talk about that, because every family is different. For some families, I'll speak personally, I do want to provide my children with the opportunity to share in the modest success that I've achieved. That's important to me. As to your earlier point, I'm not taking that money with me. And I'd like that success, that opportunity to transfer to my kids. I love them, and I care about them, and I want to give them opportunities. And so that can be important to some families. So these are the questions that we'll ask them. Tell us, have you thought about your legacy, and what would you like that to be? Now, there's no right answer to that, but everybody's got a different perspective. Tell us about your children. Are they financially literate? How would you rate or evaluate their level of financial responsibility or acumen?
Yes.
What is your objective? To support your children both today and when you're gone? Or would you rather provide them with the opportunity to kind of earn it and make it and achieve it on their own? Once again, these are the questions that we ask because every family's got a different perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so then there's another perspective here to explore as well. And this might reside for a population of individuals that actually have true kind of generational wealth.
Yeah.
But yet they are reluctant to share that information because, they're worried about what that information might do. They're worried how it might change the behavior, the perspective, the relationship with their children. So how do they kind of introduce this concept? If that is kind of their primary concern about what it means.
I understand that, and I bet you run into that in your practice.
Certainly.
Some clients who kind of misinterpret the objective. Wait a minute, Eric, what you're encouraging me to do is to open up the books and to show my teenage children all of our resources, what our homes are worth and how much money we have in our brokerage accounts and our retirement accounts, et cetera. That's not the objective. It doesn't necessarily mean dollar disclosure. The conversation that we think is most important, the one that we're referring to now, is a discussion with our children about responsibilities and expectations. What is it that we want to transfer to our kids? Dollars, yeah. But what I really want to transfer to them are values. And it's kind of funny how children learn values, Eric. I've kind of learned this. I'm 65 years old. It's taken me a long time to figure this one out. I used to think that lecturing my kids would have the positive impact that I had hoped for. And I don't know if your kids, as teenagers, if they listen to anything that you tell them.
No, yeah, it's funny. I'm not able right now to kind of penetrate that edifice that keeps Dad's wisdom from getting through to them.
Yeah, welcome to the club. I teach financial stuff for a living, and God forbid my kids listen to the financial advice I give them. Children don't necessarily listen to or follow what their parents lecture them about.
Yep.
You know how they learn? How they eventually adopt their own values? They observe through our behaviors. So if I'm materialistic as an individual, my children are pretty smart. They're sponges. They observe that behavior in me, and it's something that they acquire themselves. If I'm charitably inclined, those acts, if I choose to involve them and expose them to them, they will grow up being charitably inclined themselves. If I'm arrogant in my approach, or if I'm more modest, once again, children observe behaviors in their parents. So if you want to transfer these values to your kids, and whatever those values are, once again, humbleness, gratitude, compassion, philanthropy, etc. If you want to transfer them to your children, the best and first way to do that is by exhibiting the behavior, and then number two, having conversations. Let's break down that wall where we were reluctant to talk about money. My dad came over from Syria at the age of 18. Had no money, he put himself through Columbia University, became the director of research at Bristol Myers. And maybe because of his background or maybe because of the time, we never talked about money. And so I never really had that opportunity to learn about money until I was off on my own. And I kind of look back now suggesting that there were opportunities for me to learn and to prepare, to begin financial preparedness. As you know, I live in the state of Florida part of the year. I live in Illinois as well. But if the IRS is listening, I'm a Florida resident.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Down in Florida, there is now a requirement that every school must provide a class on financial literacy to their students before they can graduate high school. What a great concept to maybe fill that gap where parents and children haven't had the opportunity to talk about money and expectations and responsibilities.
Well, I hope that becomes, more pervasive throughout the education system. But you're exactly right. Most people do not have kind of a personal finance course to just teach them about the basics of investing and so forth. But yet every person, whether they like it or not, cannot opt out of the financial system through a job, a 401k, needing to borrow money, or just opening a checking account. Sure. Everybody has to interact. So your point about education is so powerful. And what a beautiful way to present this, which is it's not about what I say, it's about what I do.
Yeah.
That is really the key thing. So, certainly and with my household, I'll have to embrace that certainly more often if I'm going to get through to my young kids for sure.
Your goal of teaching these lessons or sharing them with your children is incredibly noble. There are a number of lessons that we need to teach our children. I'll share a couple with you now.
Yeah.
Some key lessons that children need to learn through it. Formal education or the examples that they follow from their parents. First one is sometimes children need to learn how to hear no. So I don't know what your children are like, but they go to the store and they see the candy on the shelf and they want the candy and they bug dad and they're pulling on your jacket. And finally dad says, all right, here, take the candy, gosh darn it, let's stop the negotiations. But children need to learn how to hear no. Yep. Actually, maybe it's the parents who need to learn how to say no.
Yeah,
But
right.
children need to learn how to hear no. Number two, the second thing that they need to learn is the difference between wants and needs. Do you want that particular item or do you need it?
Yes.
Let's help them differentiate between the two. Number three, they need to learn the concept of delayed gratification. If I get it immediately, it's maybe less meaningful to me. I don't learn some of the important lessons in life, which is not everything's available to me as soon as I want it. I'm not going to have every itch satisfied in quick fashion. And then maybe the last lesson is how to make trade-offs. So maybe I'm not in a financial position where I can afford to buy a new car. I'm going to need to learn or understand what is suitable or appropriate for me. Maybe it's a used car at that particular point in time. These are some of the key lessons that we can teach our children to help them become better financially prepared.
Do you have extra time to come talk to my kids today, or
Absolutely.
They would probably listen to you for sure.
Well, it's funny. They don't listen to what their parents tell them. I mean, I lecture for a living, and God forbid they'd listen to me. They would probably listen to a stranger instead.
Oh, for sure. So let's, this is a wonderful concept. We've been kind of talking about this idea, right? This kind of abstract concept.
Yeah.
But let's put some structure around it, okay? So when you think about the mechanics of how this ultimately unfolds, what is the framing, the plumbing, the electricity? What does this process look like? And I mean, let's just ask the obvious question: when do you start? Behavior is a lifetime thing, but eventually there's a conversation, a dialogue that has to occur. So how does that take shape, John?
Yeah, you
Yeah, and I like that, how you're pairing it with certain events and different things like that. I'll certainly have to take a cue from you, because my family meetings tend to be when my wife and children are in the car with me when we're traveling 6 hours to go somewhere. So
That's
then,
okay.
yeah, then they have no choice.
Exactly. They're captive audience.
Right.
But what a great way to take advantage of the opportunity, as opposed to simply blasting the radio.
Right.
Maybe you set an agenda. Don't be too rigorous with it.
Yep.
But kids, Mom and Dad want to talk about a couple of things. We want to share with you some of our goals and our desires and our best wishes for you. Mm-hmm. We want to share with you some things that maybe we haven't had a chance to talk about yet.
Yeah.
And I think that, starting that discussion, whether it's in the car or around the kitchen table, is a good thing.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So, really to kind of bring this topic to a close,
sure.
I feel a lot of times when you think about this concept of family wealth planning and so forth, I think a lot of people, understandably so, might think, well, isn't this something that, I would normally look to my estate planning attorney for, or when we sit down every few years and, look over the will, isn't that the time we would do this? So when we think about this, type of planning topic, why should clients look to, say, their financial advisor for this type of guidance? And what should they expect from the financial advisor in terms of this? Why is this an opportunity not just for the financial advisor, but also for the client?
Yeah, so the estate planning attorney, she or he, of course, play a very important role in terms of drafting documents and creating an estate plan with a primary goal of getting money efficiently from one generation to the next. But what we're discussing today, Eric, goes beyond that.
Yeah.
What we're discussing today is financial literacy. What we're discussing today is financial responsibility. What we're discussing today is financial education. I'm just started watching a new show on Netflix. It's called The Gentleman.
Okay.
Have you seen it at all?
I have not, no.
Okay, so it's about this really wealthy English patriarch who has this beautiful, humongous estate. And the patriarch passes away, and all the children are gathered together. Right, this is something we'll all be facing for the reading of Dad's will.
Right.
And of course,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows, because they never had the conversation.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the money went, or the responsibility of managing this family estate went to an unexpected recipient. And all of a sudden, you've got this conflict that emerges.
Chaos.
It's chaos. It's absolute chaos. Chaos in terms of relationships and emotions and responses, but chaos in terms of how do we now begin to manage, if you will, the very significant family business and estate that's been passed on, because nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
Nobody told them what the plan was.
Well, the interesting part about that is that makes great drama for TV, but it's not the kind of drama that you want in your own life or your own family.
It's a lot of fun to watch, but I certainly don't want to experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, John, thank you so much again for your time and being a part, of this conversation and really just educating our listeners to this topic and so forth. So once again, thank you very much for taking part in the show. And for all of you listeners out there, thank you so much for being with us today. We are Key Financial, wealth management with wisdom and care. If you have any questions about the show or an idea for a future topic, please feel free to reach out to the office or go to our website at www.keyfinancialinc.com. Thank you so much again for being with us today.